disgusting 1,100-page coronavirus bill. Nancy Pelosi released her stimulus bill, hoping it would be rushed through Congress and signed into law while the public was distracted by the coronavirus panic. But we got our hands on the bill, and the contents of it should disgust the American people. Instead of providing critical funding for the individuals and small businesses impacted by the mandatory government shutdown of private commerce, the bill funds a bunch of Pelosi's pet projects, like $35 million to the JFK Center for the Performing Arts, increasing fuel emissions for airlines, expanding wind and solar tax credits, and mandating same-day voter registration. What does this have to do with the COVID-19 virus? Absolutely nothing. But of course, Pelosi isn't going to let a crisis go to waste. With me now to analyze this bill, Policy Director for the Conservative Partnership Institute, Rachel Bovard. Rachel, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations, Rachel. You really were one of the first people to go through this bill and find these horrible, I don't even know what the word is for it besides pet policies, progressive pork, whatever you want to call it. This stuff's awful.
Yeah, but it's what we've come to expect from Democrats, right? They were able to put this together so quickly because it's been in a drawer just waiting for the right crisis to come along. And here we are, perfect bill to slap this onto. Doesn't matter that people are suffering, doesn't matter that people need, help right now, doesn't matter that hospitals don't have surgical masks. What matters is the Green New Deal. So that's what they're going to put in there.
I mean, this essentially is the Green New Deal. These are some of the other things that you reported on, that there would be a mandatory publication by corporations and businesses of corporate pay statistics by race and race statistics for all corporate boards, a bailout of all the current debt at the Postal Service, early voting, required early voting, in addition to same-day voter registration. This is crazy. So there's a provision in this bill that would allow people to look up the carbon emissions of every single flight that they take, in addition to a federally mandated $15 an hour minimum wage. Name even one thing that has to do with the coronavirus, because this stuff is crazy.
It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. But this apparently is what Democrats feel they need to do, never let a crisis go to waste. But I think what's really clear here is that Democrats don't care about working families. They only care about access to power. And that has become very, very clear. I just got off the phone with some Senate negotiators who were telling me that the sticking point now for Democrats is universal vote by mail. They are so close to being able to pass a bill that puts money in the hands of people who are suffering. And Democrats are holding it up so we can do universal vote by mail. Nothing to do with helping anyone, but this is their priority. They prioritize power over the needs of working families, and we shouldn't forget it.
No, we shouldn't forget it. I mean, this is a time when our elected representatives should be acting in a bipartisan manner. There is bipartisan agreement that when the government, even if it's the state government, shuts down private business and deprives people of the ability to engage in commerce, meaning to provide for their families, to pay their bills, that the government has some responsibility to make sure that those people have the money to keep food on their table and a roof over their head. There's bipartisan agreement on that, and an even greater percentage of agreement among voters, among the American people. That's what this bill should focus on. And yet, in the face of the fear that the American people are feeling, Nancy Pelosi chooses to focus on her pet progressive policies. It's disgusting. And it makes sense, though, when you listen to this. Congressman Clyburn was reportedly heard on a phone call saying, and this is a phone call among the Democratic caucus, quote, "This is a tremendous opportunity to restructure things to fit our vision." Rachel, they're doing this on purpose.
Yeah, no, it's been their intention all along, and it's actually shocking how shameless it is. I've worked in Washington, D.C. for 14 years. I have never seen anything quite like this. We're dealing with a crisis of unprecedented magnitude, and you have a political party that literally is putting their own policy progressive power ends in front of getting relief to workers and families. That's all this is about, is helping our economy sustain, helping working families be able to put food on the table. And you have Nancy Pelosi saying, you know what's important here? You know what will save us all? The Green New Deal. I've never seen anything like it.
Now, this is something interesting, too. I talk about often on my show how in a general election such as this one, a general election year, what's important is not appealing to your base, meaning the Democrats don't need to appeal to the 30% of their base that's always going to vote for them, or the 30% of the electorate overall that will always vote Democrat, nor do Republicans need to appeal to the 30% of the electorate that will always vote Republican. What politicians have to do, and this is why, after going to extremes in primaries, presidential candidates always play the middle. They always get more centrist or pretend to be more centrist in a general election because they need to appeal to the swing voters. But imagine coming face to face with a swing voter now. Imagine Nancy Pelosi facing down someone who works for the airline industry, or someone who has a small business in Ohio, a waitress who's been laid off because the restaurant she works for was forced to close down and now she can't pay her rent. Imagine Nancy Pelosi coming face to face with these people and saying, you should vote Democrat in November. It's laughable.
Yeah, and I think it's really telling. There was polling out today that shows that 60% of independents actually want Trump to be successful. They approve of how he's handling this because most Americans want the best for their country, no matter who's in charge, and they know we're in a crisis. The Democrats in Washington don't feel that way, and it's appalling. They will literally put their own power and their own accumulation of that power ahead of people in need in a crisis. And again, I've never seen politics as rough as this, and Democrats are doing themselves no favor. No favor. They are actually absolutely shameless about how they're handling this.
All right, let me ask you one more question before we go. Is there any dissent among the Democratic caucus about the way that Nancy Pelosi is handling this? Surely there's someone, elected official who is a Democrat in Congress, who says, hold on a second, this is really nasty politics and I don't want to play a part in this.
You haven't seen them say it publicly. They've said it privately. They'll say it off the record. They're uncomfortable with it, but they're going all in for it because, again, this is a party that puts power over everything else. They can't let a crisis go to waste.
And they know Nancy Pelosi will squash them out of Congress if they don't toe her line. It's horrifying to watch. Rachel, thank you for reporting on